When I met Ryan, I thought love would be quiet, steady. I didn't need fireworks or promises carved into air. I just wanted something that didn't fall apart when no one was watching. For a year and a half, I believed he was that kind of man. The kind who showed up when he said he would, who called just to hear my voice, who looked at me like I was the calm he'd been searching for. I built a whole version of safety around him. It was a fragile architecture. I see that now, all glass and wishful thinking. The illusion started to fracture on a Tuesday afternoon. I was home early, half distracted, scrolling through messages when a new notification appeared. A name I didn't recognize at first. Anna. Her profile photo was a blurry seaside picture, wind in her hair. The message was short but deliberate. You should know what he did to me, what he's probably doing to you. I stared at it for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen, a slow throb of dread building behind my ribs. I told myself she was jealous, that maybe she'd seen a photo of us and wanted to stir something ugly. People can be cruel when they're lonely. Still, my hands shook as I typed back. I don't understand. What do you mean? Her reply came within minutes, too fast, too calm. He cheated on me for most of our relationship. For years. I have proof. You deserve to know who you're with. What followed were **TS. Messages between her and Ryan, photos, timestamps. They overlapped perfectly with the early days of us. The weeks he was still telling me he was single, the nights he'd gone off the grid. His words to her were the same ones he'd given me. Good morning, beautiful. You're the only one who gets me. Don't tell anyone we're still talking. The same rhythm, the same lies, just recycled affection with different names attached. When I confronted him, he didn't even flinch. He just looked at me the way someone looks at a child throwing a tantrum. Yeah, I saw other people back then, he said like it was a minor detail. I was single. It's not cheating if you're not committed. You told me you loved me, I said. My voice sounded far away, like someone else was speaking through me. He shrugged. I meant it. But I didn't know anyone exclusivity. We weren't official. The way he said oh made something in me recoil. Love, to him, was a transaction with loopholes. He smiled then, that same half-smile I'd once thought was tenderness. You're overreacting, he added. You're looking for problems that aren't there. But they were there. Everywhere. I just hadn't wanted to see them. That night, I sat alone on the edge of the bed and scrolled through the old messages he'd sent me. The ones that had felt like proof of something real. Each word now looked artificial, copied and pasted from another life. I remember staring at the ceiling, trying to remember when the illusion had **N. Was it ever love? Or just **full performance? I couldn't tell anymore. I didn't leave. I told myself people make mistakes, that everyone has a past, that if he was honest now, it meant something. But honesty offered late is just strategy. I see that now. Over the next few weeks, something in me began to watch him. Not obsessively, quietly, from a distance. I noticed how he kept his phone face down on the table. How he'd step into another room when it buzzed. How his laughter changed when he talked to other women. Lighter, younger somehow. Whenever I asked who it was, he'd sigh. Why are you so paranoid? He'd say. You're going to ruin this with your insecurity. I started apologizing for asking questions that deserved answers. The first time I caught him lying again, it wasn't about another woman, not directly. He said he was working late. I brought him coffee to surprise him. His car wasn't there. Later he said he'd gone out for drinks with coworkers. When I asked which ones, he couldn't remember their names. That kind of lie is worse than the big ones. It's casual, almost lazy. The kind you tell because you think the person hearing it won't dare to leave. I began to catalog the small inconsistencies. A new cologne he said he'd had for months. The lipstick smudge he claimed was from a sample at a store. The weekend trips that started coming with fewer photos, fewer explanations. Every red flag was folded neatly into another excuse, and I believed him because the alternative was too humiliating. To admit I'd built my life around a fraud was to admit I'd been complicit in my own deception. There was one night. I still remember the exact color of the sky, that deep violet hour before darkness, when he took my hand across the table and said, You don't need to keep bringing up the past. Let's move forward. His tone was gentle, rehearsed. I nodded, pretending to agree, but in that moment, something in me began to move backward. Away from him. Away from the version of myself that kept forgiving a man who never asked to be forgiven. Love became something quiet but heavy. It no longer felt like safety, it felt like surveillance. I watched him laugh with strangers, check his phone mid-conversation, disappear into himself when I asked about plans. I started sleeping on the far edge of the bed, pretending it was because I liked the cool side of the pillow. The doubt didn't arrive all at once. It seeped. Like water finding the smallest cracks in a wall, it made its home inside me. I began rereading every message he sent, searching for hidden meanings, looking for the moment affection turned into obligation. When I couldn't find it, I blamed myself for being untrusting. That's the cruelty of betrayal. It makes the betrayed question their own sanity. Once, while he was showering, I glanced at his phone on the counter. I didn't unlock it. I didn't have to. The screen lit up with a message preview. Can't wait to see you again. No name, just a number. When he came out, I handed him the phone without a word. He took it, smiled faintly, and said, "You really have to stop imagining things." I think he believed that if he said it enough, I'd start to believe it too. But something irreversible had already happened. The illusion was cracking faster than I could repair it. I'd wake at night and watch him sleep, the rise and fall of his chest, the calm of his face, and feel an ache that wasn't love anymore. It was grief, the kind that comes before the death has even been acknowledged. By the time I finally admitted to myself what he was, it was too late. I still loved him, or maybe I just loved the story I'd written around him. But love built on denial isn't love. It's dependency. And mine had started to curdle into something bitter. That was the beginning. The first fracture. The moment I stopped believing we were on the same side. From then on, I lived with the quiet certainty that everything I held onto was already slipping away. The house we dreamed of, the future we named, all of it balanced on a foundation of lies I was too afraid to walk away from. And so I stayed. I smiled when he lied. I forgave before he asked. And I called it love because I didn't yet have another word for surrender. When my sister Jane moved back home, she carried her heartbreak like luggage she refused to unpack. Her boyfriend of 3 years had left without a proper goodbye, taking most of her confidence with him. I thought I was helping by inviting Ryan to help her move, to lift boxes, to make the process feel lighter. I told myself it would be good for everyone. A chance for my family to see the man I loved, the one I kept defending. From the first moment they met, something inside me shifted, though I couldn't name it then. Ryan was suddenly brighter, funnier. He laughed in a way he hadn't with me in months. I watched from the corner of the room as he lifted furniture with easy strength, his voice filling the air. Jane smiled too much. She brushed her hair back in that nervous way she always did when she wanted to be liked. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was projecting. I was the one carrying old wounds of betrayal, after all. Maybe I was just paranoid. But paranoia only feels irrational until the proof arrives. That evening, after we'd finished unpacking, Jane ordered pizza and opened a bottle of cheap wine. Ryan sat at the table between us, talking about music, about his job, about how moving always felt like shedding a skin. Jane laughed at everything he said. She reached for the same slice he did, fingers brushing, and they both froze, just long enough for me to notice. I remember the way my stomach twisted. Not from jealousy exactly, from recognition. I had seen that same electricity before. It was the same spark that had drawn me to Ryan, the same charm that had once felt like gravity. When I mentioned it to him later, he laughed. "You're overthinking again," he said. "Jane's your sister. I'm just trying to make her feel welcome." "I know," I said, but I didn't. Over the next few weeks, their friendship grew like a weed in sunlight. Constant, invasive. She texted him for advice on apartment repairs, car insurance, recipes, things she used to ask me. He answered immediately every time. When I noticed, he brushed it off. "She's going through a rough patch," he said. "You'd want me to be kind, wouldn't you?" Kindness. That was his favorite word. It sounded so noble when he said it, so bulletproof. I wanted to believe him. But kindness doesn't make you hide your phone when I walk into the room. It doesn't make you whisper at midnight or step outside to take calls that aren't a big deal. It was around then that my mother started inserting herself into the situation. Gently at first, then with more weight. She liked Ryan, maybe too much. "He's a good man," she'd say after dinner. "You worry too much, dear. Not every man is your ex." I tried to explain what I felt. The unease, the small shifts, the way Jane glowed around him. My mother would sigh the way only mothers can. The sigh that makes you feel like a hysterical child. "He's helping," she said once. "Maybe he's what Jane needs. A stable male figure after everything." The irony wasn't lost on me. My mother had never used the word stable about anyone in my life until it suited her own comfort. One night, I woke up to the sound of muffled talking. The clock glowed 1:42 a.m. Ryan wasn't in bed. I found him in the living room, back turned, phone pressed to his ear. His tone was soft, gentle in a way I hadn't heard directed at me in weeks. "Who are you talking to?" I asked. He jumped slightly, turned. "No one," he said too quickly. Then, realizing the lie had already fallen apart, he sighed. "Jane. She couldn't sleep. She's been having panic attacks. I didn't want to wake you." There it was again, that word, kindness. He wore it like armor, and I kept mistaking it for proof of goodness. I wanted to believe him, but the lie lingered in the air like perfume. The next morning, when I checked my phone, there was a message from Jane. "Sorry if I woke you guys. Ryan said I could call any time. He's such a good listener." Good listener. The phrase throbbed behind my eyes. I didn't reply. The distance between us grew invisible but wide. Ryan's jokes started to include her name. "You and Jane are so different," he said one evening, when I asked if he liked the dinner I'd made. "She's got this calm energy, like she doesn't need to control everything." I stared at him. "Are you saying I'm controlling?" He smiled, that easy, disarming smile. "No, I'm saying you care too much. It's not a bad thing." But the comparison hung there, sharp-edged and cruel in its softness. I tried to talk to my mother again. She waved it off. "Men and women can be friends," she said. "Don't be dramatic. Ryan's been wonderful to Jane. You should be grateful they get along." Grateful. Another word that turns guilt into virtue. It all came undone 2 weeks later. My brother stopped by unexpectedly, carrying leftover food from a family dinner I hadn't attended. He lingered awkwardly before saying it. "I saw Ryan and Jane at that bar near the river last night." I laughed, a brittle, humorless sound. "They were probably just getting food." He looked at me with that same pity I'd seen too many times before. "They were holding hands," he said quietly. "It looked int asterisk mate." That night I didn't confront him. Couldn't. I needed to see it for myself. I waited until he fell asleep, then checked his phone. The lock screen lit up with her name. "Thanks for tonight. Don't feel guilty." It was nice to talk to someone who understands me. When I asked him about it the next morning, he didn't even try to hide. "We've become close," he admitted. "But it's not what you think." "What is it then?" I asked. "She's just easy to talk to. You get so reactive sometimes. I didn't tell you because I knew how you'd take it." My voice trembled. "You mean honestly?" He rolled his eyes. "You're twisting everything. This is exactly why I can't talk to you." By then, I wasn't even angry, just numb. I told him to leave. He didn't. He just stared at me like I was the problem, like my pain was an inconvenience interrupting his self-image. The final blow came from my mother. She called that evening, her tone rehearsed, almost condescending. "I gave Jane his number, you know," she said. "I just wanted to see if he was really the man he claims to be." My breath caught. "You what?" "It was harmless," she said. "I trust him. Maybe you should too." That was the moment I understood that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the people who claim they're protecting you. I sat in silence, listening to her voice fade into small talk, my pulse pounding in my ears. When she hung up, The quiet that followed felt enormous. The kind that fills every corner of a house until you can't breathe. Ryan came home later, smiling, humming to himself. "You're quiet," he said, kissing my forehead. I didn't move, didn't speak. Something inside me had already started dying. I had loved him through lies before, but this was different. This was invasion. My sister, my mother, my own walls crumbling from within. Trust isn't shattered in one moment. It erodes grain by grain until the foundation turns to dust. That night, I finally felt the ground give way beneath me. And in that hollow space where love used to live, something else began to grow. The cold, steady understanding that I was surrounded not by partners or family, but accomplices in my undoing. My brother doesn't talk much, so when he asked if we could step outside, I already knew something had shifted. We stood on the back steps under a sky the color of dishwater, and he spoke without flinching. He'd seen Ryan and Jane at a bar by the river. Not once, but twice. The first time, he thought it was nothing. The second time, he watched them share a booth, heads tilted close, a little bubble of private weather around them while the rest of the room moved like rain. "Friend dates," he said, repeating the phrase they'd used when he confronted them. He hated the way it sounded in his mouth. So did I. When I walked back inside, my hands felt like they belonged to someone else. I set my phone down, picked it up, set it down again. Then I sent Ryan a single text, "We need to talk." He answered immediately, like he'd been waiting on the edge of a lie. We met at his apartment, the one where we'd once planned to merge our lives. I recognized the candles on the table, the throw blanket I'd picked out, the framed photo he hadn't bothered to take down. A museum of a love that had expired. He started denying before I asked. "We ran into each other." "Okay?" "Twice. It's a small city." His voice was perfectly measured. Too smooth. He forgot that I knew his tells. The way he rolled his shoulders when he was improvising. The way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes when he needed me to believe a story he hadn't rehearsed. "Did you plan any of it?" I asked. He hesitated just long enough to answer the question. "No. There is a part of me that will always try to save the moment with softness." I strangled it. "We're done," I said. The words surprised me by being steady, clean. I didn't negotiate. I didn't list the evidence like I owed him a clear path to redemption. I kept it short, clear, final. I told him I'd send someone for my things. I told him not to call me, and I told the truth. I didn't believe in us anymore. He watched me with something like curiosity, as if I just performed a trick he didn't know I was capable of. "You're overreacting," he tried. "Nothing happened." "Everything happened," I said, and walked out. The first message came from Jane 20 minutes later. "Can you talk?" I ignored it. She showed up anyway. Breathless, eyes wide, carrying a confession like a gift she hadn't wrapped. We sat at my kitchen table, the one I'd saved for, paid for, wiped down after family dinners that now felt like carefully staged scenes. She spoke in fast, pleading bursts. She and Ryan had talked about their attraction. They'd considered getting a hotel room. She swore nothing physical happened, as if intention wasn't already a betrayal. She said she'd been lonely. She said he made her feel seen. She said she'd deleted his number. I listened. I didn't cry. My grief had burned clean already. All that remained were the outlines of what used to live here. When she finally ran out of breath, she reached for my hand. I pulled mine back. Her face crumpled. "We're sisters," she whispered, as if the word could heal what it had just been used to wound. My mother arrived later, summoned by the emergency alarm of gossip. She didn't ask whether what I'd heard was true. She asked whether forgiveness might be more constructive. She said family bonds should come before anger. I studied her expression and recognized it, the soft focus lens she puts over anything that would require her to choose a side. "He's good for you," she said, even now. "And Jane's fragile. Don't be cruel." I almost laughed. Cruelty was introducing them and calling it kindness. That night, I packed what I could fit into 2 bags. Clothes, a few books, the ceramic mug with a hairline crack at the rim that I loved anyway. I left the photos on the wall and carried the memories out in silence. Ryan's text shifted by the hour, first impatient, then pleading, then unsettling in their certainty that I'd return once my mood passed. I muted the thread, took **TS of the worst ones, and saved them in a folder labeled with the date. Proof has a way of steadying your hands when the past tries to rewrite itself. Morning brought logistics. My brother met me at Ryan's door with a quiet nod and a truck. Ryan opened it like a host welcoming guests to a dinner that hadn't been planned. He tried talking to my brother first, man to man, a shortcut he thought would open a side entrance back into my life. My brother didn't move. He just picked up the first box and walked it outside. We worked in that careful, wordless rhythm people use around fresh ruins. Halfway through, Ryan asked for my key. "It's mine," he said. It was a test. Power disguised as property. I set it on the counter without fanfare. He expected that to feel like victory. Didn't. It was just weight leaving my pocket. Back home, the calls started again. Jane's apology had softened at the edges, shaved down into something blameless she could repeat to relatives. "We got too close, but we stopped," she told them, and let the white space after stopped do most of the lying. My mother's version came with moral furniture she could rearrange. A misunderstanding. Everyone's hurting. Don't make it worse. But my brother, bless him, carried a different kind of truth. He told anyone who asked exactly what he saw. Two people who knew the line and went shopping for hotel rooms to cross it. I chose silence. Not the bitter, performative kind. The kind that makes a fence around your life while the ground grows back. I blocked numbers. I let certain emails pile up unopened until their urgency spoiled. I kept the apartment clean. I slept on the couch for a week because the bed remembered too much. When my body finally understood the danger was over, it shook. I took a long shower and watched the dirty water circle the drain. Like ritual, like proof. Jane texted one more time. Deleted his number. "I'm sorry. I didn't respond." Deletion is a ceremony for the person who pressed the button. It does nothing for the person you aimed it at. Somewhere in a cloud, their conversations still lived, holding the shape of what I used to be blind to. Ryan tried a new tone, magnanimous. "We can talk when you're calm," he wrote, as if my clarity were hysteria in a more expensive dress. Then, late one night, "I miss you." Then, later still, "You'll come back. You always do." I turned my phone face down and let the screen go dark. I left the messages unread, but I did not delete them. Some doorways need to stay visible so you remember why you don't walk through them anymore. Days stretched into a quieter calendar. My brother and I took a drive with no destination and ended up at a diner that still served coffee in thick cups. We didn't talk about Ryan or Jane. We talked about the lake we'd loved as kids, about the dog he might adopt, about the small repairs my apartment needed and how he'd help me make them. We spent a weekend doing things that felt like being alive instead of being vigilant. Cooking, walking in the cold air, letting the wind thread my hair through its fingers until my scalp ached and I felt clean. News traveled without me. Our relatives learned the non-softened version. A few people tried to triangulate the pain back into order, suggesting compromises, proposing family meetings, sending long messages about forgiveness that sounded like they were reading from a book they'd never had to live inside. I didn't argue. I didn't correct them. I just declined. I stopped looking for closure. Closure is what people ask of you when they want to be absolved without changing. I wanted distance. I wanted my breath back. I wanted a future that didn't require constant translation. So I made my life small and real. I bought new sheets. I rearranged the furniture. I threw out the candle that smelled like his kitchen. I moved my body through my rooms and named them mine again. Trust, I've learned, doesn't die all at once. It thins. It fades until the memory of it weighs more than its presence. But once it is gone, the air changes. It gets lighter in a way that feels like guilt at first, then like freedom. When I finally slept through the night without dreaming of doors and keys and faces turned away, I woke to a stillness that didn't scare me. Sometimes peace doesn't stride in with triumph. It arrives like a person slipping out the back of a crowded room. Quiet, almost apologetic, but unmistakable in its relief. I didn't chase it. I let it take my hand. I didn't look back. The morning after we cleared out Ryan's apartment, the world felt newly sharpened. The air had that brittle clarity it gets after a storm, when everything glitters but still smells faintly of ruin. My brother and I loaded the last box into the truck, and he stood there for a moment, waiting for me to speak. I didn't. There was nothing left to say in that parking lot except goodbye, and even that word had lost its warmth. Inside, Ryan hovered near the door, hands jammed in his pockets, trying to appear calm. "You don't have to do this," he said. His voice had gone soft again, the same softness that once made me believe he was capable of change. "We can fix it. You'll regret walking away." I studied him in the dim light of the hallway, and for the first time, I saw him without the filters I'd built. Not the man I loved. Not the man I defended. Just a stranger wearing his voice. "Maybe I will," I said. "But regret's cheaper than staying." He flinched at that, not because it was cruel, but because it was true. My brother stepped between us, subtle but firm, and we left. I watched Ryan in the rearview mirror as we pulled away, his figure shrinking, a man reduced to the size of the lies he'd told. Back at my apartment, the silence hit like altitude. Every sound was new again. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of a clock, the soft creak of the floor when I walked across it. I didn't realize how much of my life had been filled with someone else's noise until it stopped. Ryan's messages started piling up before I even unpacked. At first, they were pleading. "We can talk. Please answer." Then they turned practical. "You forgot your charger. You'll need your documents." Then came the shift, the strange, uneasy tone of someone who refuses to believe they've lost control. "You're making a mistake. You're nothing without me. You won't find anyone who'll love you like I did." I didn't respond. Silence is the only language men like him don't know how to interpret. Still, I saved every message. Each one was a timestamp on my decision, a record of how freedom sounds when it starts rattling the cage. Jane, meanwhile, had reinvented the story. In her version, there was no betrayal, only misunderstanding. She told our relatives that she'd made a bad judgment call, that Ryan had been confusing, that I'd overreacted. My mother amplified the myth. "Families survive worse," she told anyone who'd listen. "They just need time." But lies travel differently when the truth is already loose. My brother told the real version, the one with names, dates, proof. He didn't raise his voice. He just laid out the facts like receipts. Slowly, the narrative shifted. Sympathy began to move in my direction, though it didn't feel like victory. Felt like exhaustion. A week later, my mother called. Her tone was cautious, rehearsed, the way people sound when they're building bridges they secretly hope you'll cross first. "You can't stay angry forever," she said. "I'm not angry," I told her. "I'm finished." She paused. "That's the same thing." "No," I said quietly. "Anger still wants something back." There was a long silence. Then she sighed. "Jane's been crying. She's lost too." "She lost what she chose to lose," I said. "And I'm done paying the price for her decisions." That ended the call. Days passed in quiet recovery. I focused on simple things, laundry, groceries, breathing without thinking of him. Healing, I discovered, isn't cinematic. It's domestic. It's in folding a shirt without shaking, cooking for one without bitterness, realizing you've gone an entire afternoon without rehearsing old arguments in your head. One evening, my brother dropped by with takeout and 2 beers. We sat on the balcony watching the city lights tremble on the glass towers. He didn't ask how I was. He just said, "You look lighter." "I am," I said. "Lighter, emptier. Both feel the same at first." He nodded, taking a sip. "You'll fill back up." I wanted to believe him. Maybe I already did. Later that week, Ryan showed up at my building. I saw his car from the window before he even rang the bell. I didn't answer. He called my name through the intercom, voice cracking. "We can start over," he said. "I'll do anything." Then quieter, "Please." I stood in the hallway, close enough to hear him breathe. I almost opened the door, not out of forgiveness, but out of habit. Old reflexes die slower than love. But then I remembered Anna's messages, Jane's whispers, my mother's complicity. I stayed still. After a few minutes, his footsteps faded. The silence that followed felt like the sound of something closing for good. I kept the voicemail he left that night. Not because I wanted it, but because proof is a form of armor. It began with apologies and ended with accusation, the usual cycle. You're cold. You used me. I was the best thing that ever happened to you. I didn't delete it. I needed to remember how a man can call it love while describing control. Jane reached out again a month later. Her tone was lighter, as if the past had expired on its own. I miss you, she said. Can we have coffee? Just to talk. I thought about it. About what forgiveness would cost me this time. Not yet, I answered. The truth was, I didn't want to talk about her guilt or her tears or the new therapist she was seeing. I didn't want to rebuild a relationship on top of ashes that still smoked. I just wanted distance, the kind that doesn't ache anymore. Freedom, I realized, isn't about erasing what happened. It's about choosing not to carry it. My brother and I drove out of the city one weekend. No destination, just motion. The sky was wide and pale, the kind of blue that looks freshly washed. We stopped at a roadside stand for coffee, and he asked if I ever thought about going back. I shook my head. There's nothing there, I said. Just echoes. He smiled, quiet and approving. Good, he said. You deserve quiet without ghosts in it. The road stretched ahead, empty and kind. For the first time in months, I didn't feel watched. The world no longer looked like a mirror of what I'd lost. It looked like a place I could enter again, alone but unafraid. When we got back, I cleaned the apartment again, not out of restlessness but ceremony. I threw away the last of Ryan's things. The extra toothbrush, the sweater he'd left behind, the photo of us at the lake. The trash bag was heavier than it looked. When I dropped it down the chute, the sound echoed all the way to the bottom, deep and final. That night, I slept with the windows open. The city hummed like a living thing, distant but familiar. I dreamt of nothing. In the morning, sunlight pooled across the floor, and for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to look at my phone. I brewed coffee, leaned against the counter, and let the quiet settle around me. It didn't feel like absence anymore. Felt like space. People talk about closure as if it's something you chase until it turns around and forgives you. But closure isn't mercy. It's maintenance. You build it yourself, brick by brick, every time you refuse to reopen a door that hurt you. I haven't spoken to Ryan or Jane since. My mother still sends holiday messages, polite and distant. I read them sometimes. Mostly, I let them sit unread. Some stories don't need an ending. They just need to stop. When I think of Ryan now, it's not anger that rises. It's something quieter, almost tender, the understanding that I was never really seen, only used as a mirror for his own reflection. He loved the idea of being forgiven more than he ever loved the work it required. Healing doesn't make you heroic. It just makes you honest. And the truth is simple. Peace doesn't come with revenge or resolution. It comes when you stop asking why they broke what was never built to last. So I walk forward. The world is still cracked, but it's mine to step through. And if anyone asks how I survived, I'll tell them the truth. I didn't win. I just walked away, and for once I didn't look back.